Chapter 11. Old Joe's Present. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Old Joe put his newspaper down and took off his glasses. He said reluctantly, a young man should eat fewer takeaways and exercise more. Only then can you be healthy. With just a small shower and a breeze, you got sick for 2 weeks. Your body is really weak. Sick. Su-Yang got even more confused. Old Joe pulled his drawer out to take a small paper box and passed it to Su-Yang. Here are some dried goji berries to brighten your sight and protect your liver. It also heals your weak body and relaxes your mind. Take it for a long time and it can boost your immunity. Su-Yang blankly accepted the paper box, although he did not know what Old Joe was trying to sell him. Old Joe then opened his thermos flask and cooled it down with several blows, making the goji berries inside rumble about. He took a sip of the hot water and waved at Su-Yang. It's okay now. Go back and take care of your body. A young man should work out more. If your class secretary hadn't told me about you, I wouldn't have known that you are this weak. He then tapped Su-Yang's shoulder, but Su-Yang did not even budge. Old Joe felt awkward at that instant. Su-Yang suddenly recalled that Chu Xia had pleaded on his behalf yesterday and got him a few more days from Old Joe. So, is this the reason she used? Why didn't she give me a heads up? I almost blew it. With that in mind, Su-Yang said, Thanks, Mr. Zhou. I feel better already. My immune system did deteriorate a few weeks ago, so I kept getting a cold, but I'm much stronger now. I'm here about the notes. Before Su-Yang even finished, Old Joe cleared his throat and interrupted him. Oh, the notes, you can hand them in next week. You need to know it's not a punishment. It's actually a way to educate you. You know, I'm actually doing this for your. Right before Old Joe started his nagging, Su-Yang quickly interrupted him. I finished it. Own. Old Joe actually planned to educate Su-Yang using this opportunity, but when he heard that the boy had finished copying the notes, his last word of good was swallowed back into his stomach and he looked utterly surprised. However, Old Joe was still a veteran lecturer, so he raised his thermos flask for a sip to cover his embarrassment. After he put down the flask, his face returned to its emotionless expression. He continued in his heavy tone, If you've already finished it, that's great. Despite not feeling well, you copied a week's worth of lecture notes overnight. It seems like you are a hard-working student. However, it's better to keep it consistent. Copying a week's worth of notes is. I've copied down all the lecture notes from the start of the semester, said Su-Yang, to Old Joe's surprise. Su-Yang took the stack of notes out from his bag and handed them over to him with both hands. Old Joe accepted it and quickly went over it. At first glance, he knew that it was Su-Yang's handwriting and that he had not asked someone else to help him. He also noted that he had not stolen someone else's notes. As he flipped through the pages, Old Joe realized that Su-Yang's notes were all copied in detail. The main focus of every class had been written down properly and even his own thoughts and little stories were jotted down. He could not help but suspiciously glance over at Su-Yang. Is this kid this hardworking in class? Did I punish him for the wrong reason? But the semester test is an open-book test, yet the notes have all been taken down in such detail. This kid is too hardworking and practical. With that in mind, Old Joe's gaze at Su-Yang suddenly turned softer. He only flipped through a few pages before closing the stack of notes. He passed it back to Su-Yang and said, Not bad, not bad. If you have anything that you don't understand or if there's anything that you want to talk to me about, feel free to come to me. I'm always in my office if I don't have class. Although he did not know why Old Joe switched his attitude 180 degrees all of a sudden, Su-Yang replied with a smile since it turned out well, Thank you, sir. Since the kid was so docile, after a quick thought, Old Joe pulled his drawer open and took out another paper box. Inside the box were several root-like items that were as thick as one's little finger. He took one of them out unwillingly and put it into a plastic bag for Su Yang. "This is some wild ginseng that my friend gave me. Take one and boil it with the goji berries. It will boost your immune system." Shocked, Su Yang quickly rejected the goodwill. "I can't accept this, sir. The goji berries are enough. No can do. You can only study well if your body is healthy. Don't let your body hinder your studies." Old Zhou insisted on giving the wild ginseng to him. Old Zhou stuffed the pack of wild ginseng into Su Yang's hands and patted him on the arm. "You'd better study hard." No matter how slow Su Yang was, he could feel old Zhou's anticipation for him. In the end, Su Yang failed to reject the lecturer's goodwill. He left the office with a box of goji berries and a piece of wild ginseng root. He really did not know whether he should cry or laugh at the lecturer's attitude. Although old Zhou's passion was too much to handle, being cared about warmed Su Yang's heart. "Old Zhou is really a good man. I'll try to not piss him off in the future, and maybe I'll even have a drink with him when I'm free. It's not easy being in his position." Su Yang bagged the goji berries and the wild ginseng before he looked at the time. It was almost 9:55 a.m. after the meeting, and it was time for class. He slung his bag over his shoulder and sprinted to the academic building. When he reached the lecture hall, all the students were already there, but thankfully, the lecturer, Chu Xiaomeng, had yet to show up. Su Yang heaved a sigh of relief. His strategy for English class was to secure a seat in the last row, but the last row had been taken by students from the other classes. He looked around and tried to search for a secluded corner, but Chu Xia called out to him. Chu Xia wore a floral white silk dress with a V-dot neckline. The dress set off her slender figure perfectly, making her look like a deity. However, there was a slight blemish on the perfect deity. Even though she was wearing a V-dot neck dress, all she showed were her beautiful collarbones. It was not because of the depth of the V-dot neck collar, but her bust size was too. That was the only pitiful thing about Chu Xia. Su Yang paused and asked, "Yes." After knowing her secret, the two of them became closer. Chu Xia looked around, and when she realized no one was paying attention to her, she whispered to him, "Don't always sit at the back of the class during English. Pay a little more attention. Don't you know what it means to just barely pass a subject in university?" Su Yang awkwardly cleared his throat. Every subject in the university had a final semester test, but other than a student doing poorly during the test or the lecturer catching the student skipping too many classes, the lecturer would rarely fail a student. Therefore, Su Yang's 60 marks were actually a token of mercy from the lecturer based on his usual performance. As for whether he really got 60 marks during his test, everyone knew the answer deep in their hearts. After all, the university practiced a system of adding extra marks to the tests based on a particular student's usual performance. After she saw Su Yang take her advice, Chu Xia added, "Don't forget that in order to get your honorary certificate, you must pass the English subject with class 4. When Chu Xia mentioned passing the test, Su Yang felt an immediate headache come on. For whatever reason, most of the universities in the country required the students to get at least a class 4 in the English subject to graduate. For an undergraduate university like Su Yang's, it might be easier since he would still be able to graduate albeit without an honorary degree certificate. The thought alone hurt his mind. Thanks, Su Yang bitterly thanked Chu Xia and simply sat down near her. He had not given up on searching for a secluded seat, but Chu Xiaomeng had already entered the lecture hall. The moment she stepped in, her eyes scanned over the lecture hall and ultimately landed on Su Yang as if she came here just for him. Chapter 12. Chu Xiaomeng's Purse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Right after Su Yang caught the dorky lecturer's gaze, his jaw went numb. The dorky lecturer must have remembered him. Thankfully, Chu Xiaomeng only spared a glance or two at him and did not say anything. Su Yang heaved a sigh of relief. He quickly used a textbook to cover his face and acted like an ostrich. If I can't see you, you can't see me either. Chu Xiaomeng came in dressed in a formal suit, a white shirt plus black long pants that made her doll-like face appear mature and granted her the temperament of a lecturer. However, her white loose shirt somehow seemed tight around her bust and made it look like it was going to burst. Her breasts were like two bulging hills and the buttons clung tightly together for dear life as if they could rupture at any moment. Su Yang carefully sized Chu Xiaomeng up and unintentionally switched his gaze to Chu Xia. Aren't the two of them women? How could the difference be this big? Chu Xia obviously knew what Su Yang was thinking with a single glance. She clicked her tongue and mumbled softly, men. Sigh, women. Su Yang replied with a grin. He then took out his smartphone while hiding behind his textbook and started his great undertaking of distraction. Maybe because of her experience in the first class, Chu Xiaomeng seemed a lot more at ease this time. She did not take the attendance herself this time. Instead, she told Chu Xia to do it for her while she got prepared for the lecture. Chu Xia. Present. Chu Xia called her own name and answered herself. Su Yang could not help but laugh at her. Calling her own name while taking attendance was probably the funniest thing that could happen. It made Chu Xia look dumb, which did not match her Wonder Woman image. Chu Xia did not respond to the teasing, but she stepped on Su Yang's foot. She waited for his painful squeal before she curled her lips into a winning smile and continued taking the attendance. Ever since she had shared her secret with Su Yang, she had obviously become more open with the young man. Chuan. Present. Soon enough, a total of 187 students' names were called. Only 5 were absent. Chu Xiaomeng was done with her preparation as well. She looked at Chu Xia with her doll-like face and asked, "Is it done?" Chu Xia obediently nodded. "Miss Chu, everyone is accounted for. Apart from 187 students, 5 are absent, so." Su Yang whispered softly as a reminder, but Chu Xia went ahead and said confidently, 182 present. Okay. Chu Xiaomeng nodded and started the lecture. After Chu Xia sat down, Su Yang stared at her with an astonished look. "You aren't so bad yourself." Chu Xia put her index finger over her mouth and signaled him to keep quiet. She then removed a sticky note on the attendance list. On the sticky note, there were scrawlings of 186, 185. All the way to 182. I see now. No wonder she wrote on the list. I thought she was ticking the names off, but she's actually cheating. Smart girl. There was a reason why she could conceal her secret for so long. The English class carried on without any problems. Chu Xiaomeng's replaced her dorky traits with her vast knowledge of the subject. Although it was just an English class, she was able to recite and quote many literature works, making it sound like history. She was able to relate a common greeting to some lines spoken by actors in some scenes of an American drama and even joked about it. Unfortunately, most of the students had never seen such an unpopular drama, thus she was the only one giggling at the front of the lecture hall while the students watched her within speechlessness. It was a disaster. Regardless, none of it had anything to do with Su Yang. A university student should never rely on the lecturer but should rely on oneself to pass the subject. Su Yang relied on his own luck in this class to barely pass. He once did an experiment on a multiple-choice test and he found out that he got 20 marks higher than if he had taken the test seriously. From that day onwards, he knew that English would be the Achilles heel of his life. If English was a person that could speak to him, Su Yang would want to ask English to spare him. The class ended without any unexpected incidents. Chu Xiaomeng never asked a question throughout the lecture and she did not call Su Yang at all. She was like a dog without a leash, roaming wild in the grasslands and sprinting as far as she could. Su Yang felt extremely happy about it. Right after Chu Xiaoming ended the class, Su Yang quickly tidied up his things, bowed at her, and wanted to slip away sneakily. It was then that Chu Xiaoming took a sip of water before she called out, "Su Yang. Is Su Yang here?" Su Yang's body was petrified, and he suddenly felt the entire class's gaze on him. He awkwardly nodded at the class but dared not answer Chu Xiaoming's call. He carefully turned around and had a peek at the podium through the seams of the table and chairs. Chu Xiaoming was standing on tiptoe to search for him. His mind spun rapidly for a few moments. He believed that while a monk could flee, the temple could not. After all, what went around came around. He would have to face this sooner or later. He tidied up his shirt, stood up straight, and looked at Chu Xiaoming with a straight face. "Yes, Ms. Chu." Chu Xiaoming waved at him. "Come to my office for a while." She then walked out of the lecture hall and Su Yang sighed deeply. "It seems like she's coming at me with hostility." He then followed Chu Xiaoming out of the lecture hall and followed her to the office. After 2 minutes of walking together, Chu Xiaoming's doll-like face that contained a tiny bit of baby fat showed a faint smile, making her look like a dork. Su Yang could not read the lecturer's thoughts at all. Truth be told, he had saved her twice and also scammed her for 21 yuan. During the second time, his mission felt like he was trying to assert his dominance, so he was really clueless about what was going on in the girl's mind. It might be good, it might be bad, or it could be both good and bad together. Just as Su Yang was pondering what might happen to him, Chu Xiaoming suddenly squealed. He looked at her and realized that a student had accidentally bumped into the dorky lecturer and knocked her lecture notes to the floor. The student quickly apologized and squatted down to help her pick up the notes. Su Yang also bent down to help. After he picked up a few pieces of notes, he realized that there was a little purse with flowery patterns sewn on it. He curiously picked it up and it felt slightly heavy. Although it was as big as a baby's fist, it was as heavy as 2 bags of salt. Su Yang weighed it properly and he heard clinks and clunks from within. "What's this?" Before Su Yang could find out, a hand reached out to his face. He focused his gaze and saw Chu Xiaoming. He passed her back the purse and the two of them continued onward to her office. Along the way, Su Yang's curiosity got the best of him and he asked, "Miss, what's inside your purse?" Surprisingly, Chu Xiaoming did not hide it from him. She stopped and fished out the purse from her pocket and opened it up for him to see. When he saw the contents of the purse, his eyes widened. Inside the purse were strips of gold and silver taels. The gold strips even had Huaxia Gold's logo on it, and it must weigh at least 50 grams per strip. There were 7 to 8 stripes inside. If they were converted into RMB, it would be around 14,000 yuan. The rest of the silver taels were not eye-catching at all among the gold strips. Su Yang looked at Chu Xiaoming who meekly explained, "This purse is my treasure box. I've been thinking that if I were to be struck by lightning and return to the past, with this purse, I will at least have my first bucket of gold. With a smart mind like mine, I can use the money to become even richer and maybe become the wealthiest person in the era." Su Yang was speechless. A smart mind. This girl that is something wrong with her head. Maybe because Su Yang initiated the conversation, after Chu Xiaoming explained her purse, she added, "I called you out because of 2 things. Su Yang concentrated and listened carefully. He knew that something important was coming his way. Chapter 13. Triggered another bronze mission. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Su Yang did not reveal any expression as he said, "What is it about?" Chu Xiaoming smiled, complimenting her doll-like face. "The first thing is that I want to thank you for saving me the other day, that even though the method is a little questionable," she said with a little pause in the middle. Su Yang nodded, but he did not want to elaborate on his methods. Chu Xiaoming cleared her throat and showed a solemn expression. However, no matter how serious she looked, her doll-like face did not complement the solemnity. Instead, it made her look a little dumb and cute. The second thing is, I went over your results on this subject and found out that it's very dangerous for you, my dear student. Without waiting for Su Yang to respond, she added, are you aware that you got full marks for attendance and behavior for English last semester? Su Yang was surprised by the revelation, so he shook his head because he was really clueless. After all, the marks were usually not revealed to the students. Chu Xiaoming added, you are one of the 3 students throughout the whole Faculty of Arts who got full marks for attendance and behavior. He did not comment on this. You should know why you got full marks, don't you? Chu Xiaoming asked. Su Yang nodded. He knew it was to compensate for his poor test results without even thinking. His mind spun rapidly as he calculated the marks from the test. If the full score for attendance and behavior is 30, does that mean I only got 42 marks in that test? If I get any lower than that, will I get more than the maximum of 30 marks for attendance and behavior? Ms. Zhang, you are really the best lecturer. Why did you get pregnant? Wait, it doesn't sound right. Getting pregnant should be good news. Ms. Zhang, congratulations on having a twin. While Su Yang's heart was going through a roller coaster of emotions, her round face finally exhibited a rather sober expression. You've been absent from English class several times this semester. Even if I give you full marks for other credit hours, you won't be able to get full marks this time. Su Yang's heart sank. But when she saw Su Yang's expression turn serious, Chu Xiaoming smiled. She reached out her hand and tiptoed to tap Su Yang's shoulder. Since you've helped me before, I decided to free up my weekend to give you extra tuition. What do you? Before she could even utter say, Su Yang replied as if it was part of his conditional reflex, no, Mississippi. No need to do that for me. Chu Xiaoming's smile faded and the blank dumb expression showed up once more. Su Yang's answer seemed to have exceeded her expectations. As a matter of fact, ever since she knew that Su Yang was the one who had both saved her and also scammed her money, she had started to pay attention to him. After a week of observing Su Yang's result and getting many comments from other lecturers about his behavior, she realized that his results in other subjects were quite decent and he was a bright young man. Although he barely studied, he could still secure high marks in tests, except for English. His result in this subject was unbearable to look at. As a talented lecturer in the new era, Chu Xiaoming would never let go of this chance to save a student who had deviated from the track. Of course, she also heard that he was not an obedient student. During their first meeting, he had smashed that drunkard with a brick, and at the second meeting, he had kicked his fellow student's book away. No matter how she looked at it, Su Yang was a typical unruly student. Therefore, she played this speech in her mind over and over again. First, she would tell Su Yang he could pass his previous semester because of his full marks in attendance and behavior. She would then tell him that he could no longer get full marks this semester. It would surely stir up worry in his heart. After that, she would offer to give him extra tuition for this subject. Any normal person would be grateful for her effort and would certainly agree with her suggestion. However, Su Yang was obviously not a normal student as he rejected her without a second thought. Therefore, after all her planned efforts went down the drain, Chu Xiaoming returned to her blank and dorky self. She could not help but ask, why not? Without any hesitation, he answered, I have to work part-time during the weekend to earn more money. I don't have time for extra tuition. After hearing the excuse, Chu Xiaoming somehow sighed a breath of relief. She said in a heavy tone, you are just a student. Leave the money-earning matters to your parents. You shouldn't distract yourself now. Your focus should be studying. However, after he heard what she said, the smile on Su Yang's face faded. He looked at her with a strict gaze. Miss, do you know who my parents are? Chu Xiaomeng went blank and shook her head. As he looked outside the window in the corridor, he was somewhat carried away by his thoughts. My parents are farmers. As a matter of fact, everyone in my village is a farmer. After a whole year of working, a single household can only earn around 10,000 yuan, and my parents have spent almost all their life savings to send me to university. My parents have to tighten their belts to support my daily expenses here, and a single season's harvest of grain is only worth around 3,000 yuan. Here in Shanghai, a normal student's monthly expenses cost 800 yuan at the very least. That's 800 yuan per month, but my family only earns 10,000 yuan per year, so how can they afford it? Even if they can afford my daily expenses, what about the tuition fee for the next semester? What about the semester after the next? Su Yang's revelation left Chu Xiaomeng dumbfounded. She was petrified on the spot and did not know how to answer. His gaze looked a little dull. After I came to Shanghai, I realized that the world is so big. There are a lot of people who are living a life that my entire village could never even imagine. A single meal can cost a few hundred yuan, and they can spend a few thousand on clothes or a few thousand on a smartphone. The price of a car in this place equals the amount of money that my family can never earn for the rest of their lives. After studying for a decade and more, I was taught to never bend over and submit to power for bushels of grains, but I realized if I don't bend over, I won't even have rice to eat. After studying for a decade and more, I was taught to be an independent person, not a slave to money, but I realized that a poor soul can't even live properly in this society. After studying for a decade and more, I was taught to be filial to my parents and that I must provide a good life for them, but I realized without money, you can't be filial at all and you can't provide them with anything good. I was also taught to view money and wealth as dirt and soil, but after I came to Shanghai, I realized that no one can leave this soil. Su Yang then gave her an ironic smile. I want to earn money to change my life, to change my parents' lives. You might be able to rely on your parents and your family, but I can only rely on myself. Am I making myself clear enough for you, Ms. Chu? He looked into Chu Xiaomeng's eyes with a clear and unwavering gaze. Chu Xiaomeng looked frightened and pale. She had been clueless about Su Yang's condition and could have never imagined it. She was born into an average family in Shanghai, and her parents had built her towering walls of protection ever since she was young. As a result, she thought that everyone in the world was as happy as her. Today, after what Su Yang said, the walls in her mind collapsed and crumbled to bits. She opened her mouth but failed to utter a single word for a while. Ultimately, she was able to force a sentence out of her throat. Then, what about your English result? Su Yang answered calmly, I'll pass the test with my own effort. Chu Xiaomeng could not argue with him. Ever since he had revealed his life to her, her mind blanked out and felt sluggish. She replied meekly, OK. However, after she said that, a beep sounded in Su Yang's mind. Triggered bronze mission. Acquire more than a passing mark in English during your semester.end test. What? In the hell? Su Yang was losing his mind. He was actually trying to bluff her, but the system was taking his words for real. Indeed, he was actually bluffing. While he might need money, he never believed in giving up his pride or bending over for the sake of money. There were animals which skin was valuable such as a fox, and there were those which meat was valuable such as a cow. There were also animals whose spine was worth the most like a human being's. At least, up until this point, Su Yang believed that nothing or no one in this world could buy his pride. Albeit being poor, he believed that money was not everything. The reason he made himself sound so pitiful was that he wanted the dorky girl to sympathize with him. He also said that he would pass the English test with his own effort because he wanted to build a positive image of an independent student. First of all, he wanted to change his image in front of Chu Xiaomeng, and secondly, if he really failed this semester test, she might pity him and let him pass instead. When he came up with this idea, Su Yang loved it so much that he almost gave himself a big thumbs up and praised himself for his quick wits. In the end, he managed to bluff Chu Xiaoming, but he did not expect to trick the system too. As a result, a mission was triggered. Oh my God! Chapter 14. I can locate that person. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. This woman is like a drug. This is the third mission. The third. I've beaten old Sixth Lu up for over a week every single day and can't trigger a second mission, yet Chu Xiaoming has easily triggered 3. And there are 2 bronze missions. Have mercy on old Sixth Lu. Spare his pride, please. Su Yang recalled the missions that Chu Xiaoming triggered. It seemed like all of them were bronze missions. Is this woman the hidden daughter of the system or something? Su Yang felt conflicted as he gazed at the significant, bronze, tag beside the mission interface. He really could not reject it. After all, a bronze mission could grant him abilities. The last bronze point that he got gave him, close combat, and he had been able to easily beat 3 gangsters up alone. If he got some other powerful or useful abilities from this one, he might not have to worry for the rest of his life. However, whenever he thought about passing the English test, Su Yang's heart cried a river. In the past 20 years, the best result he had gotten in an English test was during his high school years, when his mind and soul had somehow gone over the moon, and he had passed the test with borderline marks. Other than that, he had never passed an English test before. If it was not for the other languages, mathematics, biography, chemistry, and physics, which he scored with flying colors, he might not have even made it to Shanghai University. Therefore, it was not about 1 or 2 semesters worth of English tests. He might have to study for all the English tests that he had failed since he was young. However, he did not have the heart to give up on this mission, so he sighed. I'll cross the bridge when I come to it. I'll take the mission first. With that in mind, he accepted the mission with a conflicted expression. Chu Xiaoming was beside him and did not understand why his expression went through multiple changes and gradually looked worse. She could not help but ask, "Are you okay, my dear student?" Su Yang looked into the sky at a 45 degrees angle. I'm fine. I'm just expressing my deep love for my country. After brushing off Chu Xiaoming with some lame excuse, Su Yang returned to his basement and started to plan how he should complete this mission. While he barely had any solid skills, he knew his own shortcomings. He knew that he was not skilled in English and that it was nearly impossible to pass the test with studying alone. Moreover, he had to test the system, earn money, and change his life for the better, so it was impossible for him to solely focus on studying. Therefore, after some heavy thoughts, he still had to rely on the system to clear the mission. Even though the abilities that the bronze mission provided were entirely random, theoretically speaking, there should be something like English ability, or something similar, would there not? Coincidentally, he got the lucky disfiguring brick yesterday, and if he got another bronze mission and smashed himself with the brick hard, there might be a high chance for him to get the English ability. If that's the case, I might be able to clear the mission. With that in mind, Su Yang could not help but feel excited about it. He believed his plan was plausible, except for one thing. How was he going to trigger a bronze mission? Su Yang went through all the missions that he had gotten so far and realized a common point. Other than the latest mission of passing the English test, all the other missions were either related to saving or helping someone. Could he explore further in this particular direction? After having the experience of beating up old Sixth Lu like the boss in an online game that could respawn infinitely, Su Yang understood he could not trigger a mission if he intentionally hurt the person just for sake of triggering a mission. He must actually help or save someone in need. Su Yang started to think of anyone among his friends that might need help. Until the sun set and the moon rose, he finally remembered little boss Tang from Dafa Gold's shop in the recesses of his memory. Su Yang searched for Little Boss Tang's WeChat contact and started to scroll around his friend's circle, attempting to locate some clues. However, Little Boss Tang did not post anything on his friend's circle in the past 2 days. Since he was clueless, the only way was to intentionally start a conversation. He pondered about the words before he typed a message to Little Boss Tang. Little Boss Tang, my friend said you also know about fortune-telling. Is that right? In Dafa Gold Shop at number 26 Yangon Alley. Tang Dafa was sitting in his office with a gloomy look on his face. He had been troubled by nervousness and helplessness for the past few days, and it was because something had happened to his side business. Something had gone wrong with his fortune-telling. A regular female customer had lost her daughter and the police failed to locate her. In the end, the customer placed her last hope on him, begging him to locate her daughter. However, fortune-telling was not real, so how could he know where a person was without any clues? Therefore, Tang Dafa rejected her and said he did not have any accomplishments to locate a person and that he could not help her. He thought the matter would subside after that, but that female customer was a simple-minded person. She was resilient and came to his shop every day, crying and begging for his help. It had since gotten out of control and even affected his gold business. The troubled Tang Dafa was only in his late 20s, yet he already had white hair on his head. Sigh, how could I not see that she was just a persistent and a stubborn person? I thought she was sincere and would listen to everything I said. Never did I think that she would believe me to this extent. Tang Dafa was gazing at the altar of the 5-path fortune gods while he deliberated the problem. It's already the modern age and there are still people believing superstitions blindly. Am I unlucky or what? Just as he sighed, his smartphone on the table received a notification from the WeChat app. He picked it up and saw that it was a message from the student who came to sell his golden card 2 days ago. Little Boss Tang, my friend said you also know about fortune-telling. Is that true? Tang Dafa's first reaction was to ignore the message, but on second thought, since the young man was Jiang Yan's friend, he had to show the latter some respect and entertain him. He unlocked his phone and replied with his fat fingers. Yes. In less than 10 seconds, the young man replied. I saw a woman in formal wear and short skirt at your shop that day who was trying to locate her daughter. Is it possible? Tang Dafa was surprised when he saw the message. Does this young man know about the woman too? Is he trying to locate his relative or whatnot? With that in mind, he twisted his fat face together and replied. You have to be sincere about this. After the reply, he pushed the phone away. He did not have any bad impression of Su Yang, or rather, he had no impression of the kid at all. If not for Jiang Yan's introduction, he would never have cared about a seemingly poor student from a powerless family who did not have any benefits. Therefore, Su Yang's persistence irritated him. He felt like this university student was dumb and could not grasp the situation properly. As expected, he received another message in less than a minute. Tang Dafa frowned when the notification rang from his phone. Adding Su Yang's WeChat was a mistake as he could not see an end to this. He intentionally did not want to reply, but since he had nothing to do at the moment, his slight OCD made him pick up his phone and read the message. To his surprise, the message from Su Yang read. I might be able to locate the girl. Chapter 15. Looking for Tang Xiaomi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Following the arrival of the message, Tang Dafa's heart pounded quickly. However, his fat face clamped together again. This little student can locate someone. With what? A compass. Despite feeling suspicious, since Tang Dafa was able to open such an influential gold shop in Yangon Alley in the outer harbor of Shanghai, even if he did not have his family background to back him up, he was also a smart person. He did not reply to Su Yang right away and made a call instead. After the call got through, a slightly rough but sweet female voice answered. She asked coldly, what is it? Tang Dafa showed a wide smile when the voice answered. Young Master Jiang, who exactly is the student that you introduced to me? Oh. Your BFF's classmate. Not a local. You don't know him. I get it now. Thank you, young Master Jiang. He then hung up and the smile on his face grew even wider because he knew what he should do. He tapped on the WeChat app and typed a message. My dear boy, do you know fortune-telling as well? A moment later, he got a reply. A little, but I'm not good at it. I only know how to locate people. Tang Dafa was overjoyed when he saw the latest reply. He was certain Su Yang was a scammer. While he had packaged himself as a fortune teller, he did not actually believe it. The reason he did it was that in Shanghai, a lot of powerful people believed in it. On top of that, he had met a specialist before and found out that fortune-telling was more or less based on scientific evidence. Since it was part science, fortune-telling should be a segment of psychology. A fortune teller would analyze the target based on appearance, attire, and body language to find out about one's occupation, age, family background, and even thoughts. The goal was to locate the mental weakness of the target, and from there, the fortune teller would use that to guide the target and make the target believe what the fortune teller said. As for those fortune tellers who had high accuracy, they probably applied a psychological effect, also known as the placebo effect, to guide the target. When the target fully trusted the fortune teller, the latter would insert a powerful mental hint in the target's mind and slow down whatever the condition the target was having or make the target do whatever the fortune teller told him to do. Since Tang Dafa was very familiar with these tricks, the moment he heard Su Yang claim that he knew fortune-telling, he immediately grouped Su Yang with the scammers. His mind spun for a moment. Since this university student alleged to know fortune-telling and said that he could locate a person, Tang Dafa could just toss the female customer to Su Yang so that he could be free from the trouble. Even if Su Yang could not find the girl, the female customer would not blame Tang Dafa either. With that in mind, Tang Dafa sent a message to Su Yang. Why don't you drop by my gold shop tomorrow? I'll introduce the friend to you. If you can really locate her daughter, I'll pay you a commission. Deal. On the second day, which was a Saturday, Su Yang arrived at Dafa Gold shop early in the morning. Tang Dafa welcomed him with his golden smile and led him to the office where the female customer was already waiting. Su Yang barely had a glimpse of the female customer the last time, but this time, after a closer look, he realized she had a great body. The only flaw was her temperament. She might have a layer of expensive makeup on her face, but she looked weak. The strength, independence, and confidence of a powerful lady living in the city were absent. Her looks were rather decent, but due to the possible lack of sleep in the past few days, tiny wrinkles started to show at the edge of her puffy, red eyes. All the signs gave away her identity of a mother. After Su Yang sized the lady up, Tang Dafa introduced him to her. Ms. Tang, this is my friend who's also a fortune teller. I might not be skilled in locating people, but his forte is divining and locating missing people. Tang Jing's weak gaze switched from Tang Dafa to Su Yang. Her gaze revealed a tinge of suspicion and worry, but she did not voice her rejection. Instead, she asked meekly, Master Tang, isn't this master a little too young? Before Su Yang could say anything, Tang Dafa explained, Ms. Tang, age is just a number for skills. You shouldn't look down on my friend because of his age. He's honed his fortune-telling skills to locate people, and I dare say that there isn't anyone in this world that he can't find. Tang Dafa was aggrandizing Su Yang boldly, and his intention was simple. The higher he boasted about Su Yang, the higher Tang Jing's expectation of him would be. Should anything happen in the process, Su Yang would be the one in trouble instead of Tang Dafa. After all, he could simply say, I didn't know that my friend isn't as skillful as I thought, and he could escape bearing the responsibility. Moreover, he had specifically stated that he was not skilled in locating people and was doing whatever he could to help. Therefore, he had fulfilled his duty as a fortune teller. As for where the little girl was, it had nothing to do with him. After hearing what Tang Dafa said, Tang Jing's eyes were burning with hope. She looked at Su Yang with anticipation and hoped for his hopeful answer. Su Yang shook his head and said, "I'm not as magnificent as little boss Tang says. My fortune-telling has limitations as well. I can only locate the person if she's within my sensing range, so I can't guarantee your daughter's location." The anticipation on Tang Jing's face was replaced with disappointment instantly. Tang Dafa's eyes gleamed. This is such a good excuse. Why didn't I think of it earlier? I must say my fortune-telling is out of range if I ever fail in the future. It's beyond me, so I can't do anything about it. Yes. That will work. With that in mind, Tang Dafa's gaze at Su Yang was a lot gentler. This kid is a really smart one. Too bad he is going to be my scapegoat. He cleared his throat and said, "Miss Tang, why don't we let my friend have a try since you don't have any other better ways to approach this, am I right?" Tang Jing sighed at Tang Dafa's words and she reluctantly said, "Okay." Following Tang Jing's agreement, a beep sounded in Su Yang's head. Triggered bronze mission. Locate Tang Xiaomi. I did it. It's a bronze mission. Su Yang sighed a breath of relief. His hard work had finally paid off. Next, he would have to find that little girl. Tang Xiaomi. What an odd name. Su Yang put his bag down and took out some papers and a pen. He started asking questions. "Ms. Tang, where did you lose your daughter?" Tang Jing's gaze looked dull when she heard the question. "At Tisney." "Did you make a police report or try the broadcasting system in the theme park?" asked Su Yang. Tang Jing shook her head. "I did. I tried to look for her using the broadcasting system, but Xiaomi didn't come back to me. I made a police report, but the security cameras captured too many people. My daughter is too small, so they couldn't locate her from the footage." Su Yang spun his pen twice with his fingers and tapped the stack of paper. "Well then, shall we go fortune-telling around Disneyland?" Chapter 16. 8. The Offering. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Even though Tang Jing was suspicious of Su Yang's ability, since he was someone Master Tang introduced, he must have some true skills. Being calm with that in mind, she suppressed the anxiety in her heart and asked, Then, Master Su, what do we need to prepare?" Su Yang kept his pen and papers into his bag as he said, "Miss Tang, if you don't mind, can you send me several pictures of your daughter?" Tang Jing was slightly surprised but did not ask why. She exchanged contacts with Su Yang via WeChat and sent him some pictures. After the pictures were sent, she asked, "Do you need her date or time of birth as well?" Su Yang scrolled through the pictures and shook his head. "There's no need for that." "Then, do you need her belongings or should I write down the characters of her name?" He shook his head. "That won't be necessary." Tang Jing's heart slowly sank. Fortune-telling without having the date and time of birth and not needing me to write the characters of her name. This Master Su, does he really know how to do this? On the other hand, Tang Dafa was also slightly shaking his head. The kid is still too green. The essence of fortune-telling is to make people believe it since it's a part of psychology. The more items you require, the better it will work and you shouldn't go against the norm. Tang Dafa always did his homework about what other fortune tellers used during their performance, and he would be sure to have it or even more than that to show off his professionalism. Only then would the customers believe him. An amateur like Su Yang, who did not need anything but a picture, might not even fool an idiot. Su Yang was clueless about what the two of them were thinking. He checked the pictures on WeChat and saw a little girl with a high nose, big eyes, and black hair. She was around 4 to 5 years old and was quite cute for her age. She wore a pink dress and had a pair of Mickey Mouse ears on her head. Her smile revealed two bunny teeth at the edge of her mouth, which increased her cuteness. She seemed like an obedient and nice little girl. The thought of such a cute little girl going missing made his heart tighten a bit. She might have been kidnapped or worse. Su Yang was not actually a good person. After all, he offered his help just because he wanted to accept the mission and get more bronze points. However, when he saw the picture of the cute girl, for the first time in his life, he had the urge to save this little girl even if it cost him his mission. A young and cute little girl who had barely experienced the world meeting a bad end. Nothing was more pitiful than this. Maybe this was the reason why he got the point system, to be a better person. He discarded the complicated thoughts from his mind and left Dafa Gold's shop with the anxious Tang Jing. The two of them were heading to Disneyland. Tang Dafa would never follow because he originally wanted to get out of this trouble, so after he heard that the two of them were going, he quickly sent them off and strongly expressed that he believed in Su Yang's ability, hence he was not following them. Tang Jing's family must have deep pockets. The car that she drove gave her away. As a fashionable but practical luxurious car, the Porsche Panamera cost almost 1,000,000 yuan. The two of them got into the car with Tang Jing in the driver's seat and Su Yang in the passenger seat. After they got into the car, Tang Jing gripped the steering wheel for a while as deep thoughts rumbled in her mind. In the end, she looked at Su Yang with a worried expression. "Master Su, can you really find my daughter?" Su Yang might have accepted the mission, but he did not make himself clear. "If she is still within Shanghai, we should be able to find her." Although he did not elaborate, his meaning was obvious. If Tang Xiaomi had been kidnapped by smugglers and sent out of Shanghai, his hands would be tied. After all, the whole of Huaxiawan was huge. It had been 2 days since the little girl went missing and that was enough time for her to travel to the Zhejiang province. Given Su Yang's 20 kilometers range of detection, if he wanted to locate her outside the city, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. She was prepared for the worst, but after hearing Su Yang's answer, Tang Jing was silenced. She lowered her head and her shoulders started to tremble. A crystal-clear tear fell on her lap that was covered in black stockings. It slowly spread and seeped into the fabric. Su Yang sighed. He pulled a piece of tissue paper out and passed it to her. Despite accepting it, Tang Jing did not look at him. Her head remained low as she wiped her tears away. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Su Yang then asked, "Oh, I haven't heard about your husband. Your daughter is missing. Where is he?" Tang Jing calmly replied, "He's dead." "I'm sorry." Maybe because the topic was not suitable for the situation, the car became quiet. A moment later, Tang Jing looked up and shoved the tissue away, then the car growled to life. It was silent along the way, and only the heavy growls of the engine buzzed in the car. Soon, the two of them arrived at Disneyland. Tang Jing parked the car and looked at Su Yang with anticipation. He was her last straw of hope. Her gaze was burning and Su Yang was not used to it at first. He tried to console her, "Disneyland is a place for families. Kidnappers won't usually target this obvious place." Maybe he knew his consolation was not convincing enough, so he cleared his throat to cover up his embarrassment. He then fished out his pen and paper from his bag and a bunch of dot grapes. It was the new fruit that he had bought to search for Tang Xiaomi. He had grown tired of eating prunes for the past few days while mulberries and blueberries were too expensive. Bananas, oranges, and apples were too big to carry around, so he actually planned to use the Saintis fruit, which was mini tomatoes, but after he ate it, he realized that it was useless. Maybe the system viewed the mini tomatoes as a vegetable. In the end, he picked grapes. Su Yang laid the paper flat on his lap and held the fruit-loving pen in his hand. After he plucked a grape and tossed it into his mouth, he uncapped the pen and thought of Tang Xiaomi's name and how she looked like. He slowly chewed on the grape. Tang Jing watched the process from the start. From the moment Su Yang brought his pen and paper out, she already had her doubts, and when she saw the grapes, she was baffled with confusion and suspicion. However, she convinced herself this might be Master Su's unique method of fortune-telling. After all, every master had their own unique secrets, so maybe he used the grapes as an offering. Then, she saw Su Yang hold the pen and toss a grape into his mouth. Tang Jing could no longer convince herself about what she saw. Her suspicion had reached its peak. What is this Master Su doing? Why is he eating the offering? Su Yang held the pen tight and closed his eyes. The sweet and sourish juice of the grape burst in his mouth and he could not help but feel a tingle at his lower jaw. He knew it was a necessary process, so he did not let his thoughts stray. He tried his best to picture Tang Xiaomi's face while he thought of her name. He waited patiently for the fruit-loving pen to write down the address of the little girl, but after he finished the grape, the pen did not move at all. Absolutely nothing happened. Chapter 17. Searched all over Shanghai. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Su Yang's heart slowly sank. The worst-case scenario had happened. Tang Xiaomi was not in Disneyland. The Disneyland in Shanghai was around 400 hectares, which equaled 4 square kilometers. The sensing range of the fruit-loving pen was a 20 kilometers radius starting from Su Yang, so that was 1,256 square kilometers. Su Yang searched online and knew that Haidong New District where Disneyland was located in was 1,220 square kilometers. Even though his sensing range could not cover every inch of the district, he should be able to cover enough ground. In conclusion, Tang Xiaomi was not within Haidong New District. Where had she gone to? Su Yang opened his eyes in a daze and saw Tang Jing looking at him doubtfully. Her face had every emotion of hers written on it. He subtly put the pen away and said, "Let's go." She's not here. Tang Jing stared straight at him without uttering a word for a while and the doubts piled up in her heart. However, her soft side decided to compromise in the end. She started the car and said, "Where to?" Hongqiao District. Hongqiao District was the most important transportation hub in Shanghai. Every transportation hub such as an airport, train stations, and bus stations was located in that district. With Su Yang's lead, Tang Jing drove the car to the center of Hongqiao District. Similar to what he did near Disneyland, he held the pen, closed his eyes, and ate a grape, but nothing happened. The little girl was not in the transportation hub either. Su Yang felt absolutely clueless. After that, the two of them drove all over Shanghai and searched in every single district. Donghui District. No. Minhui District. No. Shipu District. No. Songjiang District. Also, no. All the major districts in Shanghai were covered, and as Su Yang chewed on the grapes one after another, his heart sank deeper and deeper. Tang Jing also looked worse for wear. The smile on her face was as fake as it could get, and in the end, she did not even bother hiding her emotions anymore. After all, anyone would be extremely dubious after driving a suspicious young man all over Shanghai and all the young man did was hold a pen, eat grapes, and nothing else. While they were waiting for the traffic light, Tang Jing quietly messaged Tang Dafa via WeChat. "Master Tang, your friend doesn't seem to know what he is doing. Can you introduce me to another master?" Tang Dafa was seated in his comfortable office chair after transferring the troublesome woman to Su Yang. He was looking at his shop sales for the month and was enjoying a Coke. He picked up his phone after he heard the notification and saw Tang Jing asking him for help. He looked askance at the screen and giggled since he was not surprised at all. Fortune-telling was nothing but deception. At most, there might be a little bit of psychological effect in play, but it was not magical by any means. It was no surprise to Tang Dafa that Su Yang could not locate the girl. In fact, he would be frightened if Su Yang could. This woman is really dumb. Does she really believe that fortune-telling can locate someone? Is her mind okay? Besides, I've shifted the trouble to that dumb university student, so why would I take the trouble back? I'm not an idiot. With that in mind, he replied. Ms. Tang. It's not that I don't want to help you. Do you know that people like us have specialties, and Master Su is the best master I know who's skilled in locating people. If even he can't locate your daughter, I'm afraid I might not have any other recommendations. Why don't you try another fortune teller? Maybe you will be surprised. Up until this point, if Tang Jing had yet to realize Tang Dafa was just shifting the responsibility to someone else, she was not worthy of sitting in a car worth $1,000,000. She slammed her phone at the windshield and opened the storage compartment of the car. She grabbed a stack of money out and threw it at Su Yang. You are just trying to cheat my money, aren't you? Here. Take it. Take it and go. Stop treating me like an idiot. Su Yang was actually checking the map of Shanghai, and all of a sudden, he was covered in money. He was shocked for 2 seconds before he stared at Tang Jing. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. At first, Tang Jing was furious at Su Yang, but as the seconds passed by, her eyes slowly wavered and then she started to avert his gaze. She dared not look the young man in the eyes. Su Yang quietly picked up the scattered money and put them back in her hand as he said calmly, Ms. Tang, I know how you are feeling right now, but please don't let your emotions get the best of you. I want to find her as well. If she's still in Shanghai, I will be able to find her. He looked deeply into Tang Jing's eyes and said firmly, please believe me, and please give Xiaomi a chance. Maybe she's waiting for you in some hidden place, cold and alone. Tang Jing stared blankly at him. Her nose started to sting and her eyes started to get teary as if a layer of mist had covered her sight. A moment later, she lowered her head and wiped her tears while she said meekly, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm really having a lot of pressure these few days. I'm sorry. All parents on earth loved their children, and even if there was 1 in a millionth chance, she would continue to search for her daughter. If it was not her last resort, she would not have placed her bet on fortune-telling either. Even a stranger who she had just met that morning was holding on, so how could she give up like this? The car purred back to life and started to circle more of Shanghai to search for Tang Xiaomi. Xuguang District, Changtai District, Jinghui District, Pushan District, every single district was covered. The two of them circled the biggest city in the country whole but got nothing. Tang Jing's disappointment grew bigger and she fell deeper into despair. She knew that she might have lost her daughter and that she might never come back to her again. The picture she had of her daughter with Donald at Disneyland might be the last memory she had of her. The sky turned dark. The search had started from morning to night and both of them did not have anything to eat or drink at all. Su Yang was running low on grapes. Now, whenever the car drove out of the 20 kilometers radius range, he would take one and search every corner and alley, but he still got nothing. I think this will be it. Thank you. Maybe Xiaomi is really not in Shanghai anymore. I'll go to the police station in the next province tomorrow and hope for the best, Tang Jing said with a sigh after she looked at the time. It was already 10 p.m. No matter how long it takes or wherever I have to go, I'll search for her, and maybe one day, she will come back to me. Su Yang went silent for a moment before he said, I'll go with you tomorrow. Tang Jing looked at Su Yang in shock. He averted her gaze and added, but I can at most help you for 2 more days. After that, if we can't get anything in the neighboring province, I have to come back for classes. You really don't need to. Su Yang stopped her and said, I want to find her too, or maybe I'm just trying to do something good here and I can really locate her if she is within the sensing range, he said with a little pause in the middle. Tang Jing smiled and did not say anything since she had no comment about Su Yang's methods. She did not reject Su Yang's goodwill. Then, you can stay at my place today. We will leave at first light in the morning. Sure. The Porsche sprinted on the Shanghai highway. As the scenery outside the window got a little less populated, Su Yang could not help but ask, "Where's your place anyway?" "Jian. A villa at the edge of Jian." Su Yang leaned his head on the window. Wealthy people, that he stuffed a grape in his mouth. Since the grapes were almost finished, it would be a waste if he did not finish them. However, right after the grape entered his stomach, the pen in his hand started to move. Chapter 18. Who is this girl? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Su Yang sensed the unusual feeling and it caught him by surprise. His heart started to pound. Am I getting something? He quickly closed his eyes and thought of Tang Xiaomi's name and how she looked like. The feeling got stronger as a blurry location slowly started to surface. What's this? I got it. Su Yang opened his eyes wide at the piece of paper. Overjoyed, he shouted, "Stop the car. Stop." Tang Jing was driving quietly, but when she heard Su Yang yell out all of a sudden, she stepped on the brakes and the car skid along the highway with a loud screech. 2 black trails were left in its wake after it stopped by the side. What's wrong?" she asked. Su Yang raised the paper urgently. Xiaomi. Tang Xiaomi's location. Tang Jing was shocked and failed to respond right away. A moment later, she joyfully grabbed the paper for a closer look. Really, is this the place that you foresaw? He nodded. She must be here. And this place is no farther than 20 kilometers from our position. Excitedly, Tang Jing read the address on the paper, but a second later, her smile froze. She looked at Su Yang with a strange gaze. In confusion, Su Yang asked, "What? What's wrong?" She had to force the words out of her throat for an answer. "This my house." The atmosphere in the car plunged into silence for a moment. How is it possible? The same thought rose in both their minds at once, but they were suspecting different matters. Whether it was real or not, Tang Jing ought to find out. She floored the pedal as hard as she could, not caring whether she broke the speed limit or not as she drove back to her house like a bolt of lightning. Soon, in less than 15 minutes, the two of them arrived at the villa area. Tang Jing drove in and stopped at her own unit. She did not even drive her car into the garage. She sprinted down the car, went through the garden, and nervously opened the door to get to the second floor. Su Yang failed to follow her footsteps, but he managed to make his way into the house. Tang Jing was very rich. Her home was a villa with an independent garden. The interior design was based on the Northern European architectural style. The shallow gray tone made the building fashionable. The renovation of the whole villa might not look costly, but the details were everywhere. There was a goat pelt carpet from Greece, chandeliers from Italy, and high-quality granite flooring. Everything was as expensive as it could get. While Su Yang was impressed by Tang Jing's wealth, he walked through the villa's living room and arrived at the stairway to the second floor. Right after he put his foot on the first flight of stairs, he heard Tang Jing's loud cry from above and the meek voice of a little girl, consoling her, "Mommy, why are you crying?" Su Yang stopped and returned to the living room to give the mother and daughter their own private time. At least, they deserved this time together after having been a few days apart. He sat down on the sofa and started scrolling Tieba One on his phone. Someone had posted a picture of a girl among the threads. She looked beautiful with big eyes, a high nose, fair skin, and a petite face. She somewhat resembled a Westerner. The title of the picture was, "Who is this girl?" Su Yang simply replied, "I've studied her for 3 minutes and I'm sure she isn't Han Hong." Then, he continued scrolling and saw another picture of the same girl again. Maybe because the girl appeared twice in such a short time, Su Yang did not ignore the picture and tapped on it. It was a new article. The hottest online newcomer of the country, Han E, reveals her newest work. An online personality. Su Yang pouted. Online personalities, be it hunks or cute lasses, were all over the place recently, but most of them would be has-beens after a few years. Only a handful of them could make it in the long run, thus it was no wonder that he did not know about her. Even if the girl was some popular actress, he might not know because he never cared about showbiz and had never fanned any idols. After all, fanning an idol or an idol group was a leisure activity for rich people. A poor man like him could not afford it. With that in mind, Su Yang turned off the tab and wanted to scroll further. It was then that he heard thumps down the stairs. Su Yang kept his phone away and turned around. Tang Jing had brought a little girl down with her. The little girl's eyes were big while her round face was cute and her eyes were lively. She held Tang Jing's hand and looked at Su Yang with her large curious eyes. She turned to her mother and asked, "Mommy, who is this?" Tang Jing shook her hand and said, "Don't be rude. Call Uncle. Big brother is good enough," said Su Yang. The little girl looked at him and smiled sweetly, showing her two bunny teeth. "Hello, Uncle." Su Yang somehow started to hate the little girl. Tang Jing put the little girl on the sofa and introduced, "This is my daughter, Xiaomi. I really have to thank you today for accompanying me. I'm really impressed by the accuracy of your divination." She was really at home. Tang Jing had gone through a lot for a day. She was originally a superstitious person. Otherwise, she would not have gone for fortune-telling or whatnot. After spending a whole day with Su Yang, her belief in superstitious stuff started to waver. Even after Su Yang told her he would help to find Xiaomi and did not want any money for it, her doubts lingered. It even made her feel a little stupid for following a fortune teller and run around the city, divining with a piece of paper and pen while eating grapes in every district they stopped by. If she had the time to do silly things, she might as well spend the time distributing flyers of the missing girl. However, after she saw Su Yang write the address on the paper, she was shocked because she had many properties in Shanghai. This villa was near the outskirts of the city and she had decided to go here for the night because the two of them were close after searching for a whole day. She did not usually live there and no one would know about this villa. She would only spend the weekend here with her daughter. At that moment, she had to admit that her heart had pounded fiercely while a strong feeling made her believe that her daughter might be there. However, she did not know whether it was an illusion or not after struggling for a whole day or if she was just trying to hold on to the last straw of hope. She stepped on the pedal and drove back home. She would either see her daughter or unveil the mask of this scammer beside her. When she reached the second floor and saw Xiaomi, her emotions erupted and she went out of control. Su Yang was really a master. He really found her daughter. Others might not understand her feelings. Her daughter had returned home by herself and had nothing to do with Su Yang, so why should she be grateful and thank Su Yang? Most of the people might have experienced something similar before. They might have a simple matter at hand, but no matter how hard one tried, the matter could not be solved. When a person who might be able to solve the matter came by, be it by pressing a switch or simply saying something, and the matter was solved, one would come to realize the situation and see the big picture. It was actually a simple situation, but before anyone popped the bubble, no matter how hard one pondered upon it, one could never find the answer to the matter. Sometimes, the answer might be right in front of you, but if no one pointed it out, the answer might feel extremely elusive. Chapter 19. A good soul recompensed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The same theory applied to this incident as well. Tang Xiaomi had been missing for 2 days, and Tang Jing had been searching for 2 days, but she only returned to her home in the city center. She had never once thought of checking the villa on the outskirts. However, Su Yang foresaw it, so she had gone over and had really found her daughter. It was undoubtedly his hard work. Otherwise, who knew how long Tang Xiaomi might have been stuck in this villa and how long Tang Jing would have taken to find her daughter. Looking at her daughter in her arms, Tang Jing recalled the hardship that she had been through these 2 days, especially today. Everything was worth it and she felt ashamed of doubting Su Yang for a whole day. She unconsciously sat up straight and said to him, "Master Su, thank you for finding my daughter. What do you want in return? As long as it is within my achievable range, I won't deny you." She then fished out a stack of money wrapped in a red envelope from her bag and gave it to him. "Here's 10,000 yuan as a small token of appreciation. Please accept it, master." Su Yang saw the stack of paper with Grandpa Mao One's face on it and was shocked, but he was able to recover a moment later. Previously, he might have had all sorts of greedy thoughts about the stack of money, but after earning the 20,000 yuan from the gold, having another 10,000 yuan in front of him actually still felt a lot. However, he was a realistic person, so he pushed the stack of money back and said, "Thank you, Sister Tang. You can keep the money. I'm actually happy for you now that Xiaomi is back, and actually, she came back by herself, so it isn't right for me to take the money." It was Su Yang's honest thoughts. Tang Xiaomi did return home herself, and he had nothing to do with this. If he took the payment without actually doing anything, he might not be able to sleep at night, but if the amount was a little less, he might accept it. Something like 888 yuan, 1,888 yuan, or even 2,888 yuan would be fine, and he would have shamelessly accepted it. 410,000 yuan was a little too much for his morale bottom line. On top of that, Tang Dafa said he would be given a commission. Su Yang was clueless about how much he would get, but since he would be getting a share, getting another big red envelope from Tang Jing was not really appropriate. Therefore, Su Yang suppressed his pounding heart and rejected the token of gratitude. Tang Jing insisted that he take it. The two of them pushed the stack of money back and forth for quite a while before it ended with Su Yang's persistence. He did not take the money in the end. Since Tang Xiaomi had returned, Su Yang no longer needed to follow Tang Jing to the next city, so he took his leave. Tang Jing offered to give Su Yang a ride home, but he rejected it at first. Nevertheless, Tang Jing said she had to send Tang Xiaomi back to the house in the city center anyway, thus Su Yang agreed to hitch a ride. On the way back, Tang Jing drove while Su Yang and Tang Xiaomi were sitting in the rear seat. For some reason, Tang Xiaomi was very curious about Su Yang and she insisted on sitting with him at the back. It got a little boring on the way back. Therefore, Su Yang took the initiative and asked, "Oh right, how did you get home, Xiaomi?" Tang Jing answered as she continued driving, Xiaomi said after she got lost. She took the subway and public transportation to get back. Before she could finish, Tang Xiaomi angrily interrupted her, "I didn't get lost. You are the one who got lost. I told you I was going to the toilet and that I would wait for you at Mickey's spot after that. But when I came back, you were not there. I tried looking for you, but you were gone, so I carried my little bag along with me, took the subway, and boarded the bus back home." Tang Jing apologetically smiled at Su Yang through the rear mirror before she explained, "I got a little caught up with work that day. I was on the phone, so I might have missed it when Xiaomi told me where to meet up. In the end, I lost her." Su Yang somehow felt doubtful about the mother-daughter duo. These two aren't as reliable as they seem. Did the little girl really get home by herself? It's a little dangerous. Shanghai is a big city and a 4 to 5-year-old kid took the subway and the bus home safely. Is Shanghai a little too safe? Or are the people too cold? Right after the thought popped in his mind, Tang Xiaomi joyfully said, "Actually, on the way back home, there are a lot of uncles and aunties who asked me whether I lost mommy. They offered to bring me to mommy, but I'm a smart girl. I said no to all of them. My mommy said those uncles and aunties who offered to bring me to her are all bad people. No wonder the police had nothing on her." Tang Jing's safety education was a little too fail-proof. Tang Jing softly continued, actually, during the first day, I tried the broadcast system in Disneyland and contacted the police, but the police told me to wait. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing, so I went to Master Tang for help. Master Tang didn't want to help me and kept rejecting me. Thankfully, he introduced you to me. Otherwise, I might not know how to get through this. I didn't actually do anything, Xiaomi returned home by herself, said Su Yang. But if it was not for you, I might not be able to find Xiaomi this soon, said Tang Jing. Su Yang did not argue anymore because it was the truth. Soon, Tang Jing dropped off Su Yang at the entrance of his neighborhood. Su Yang got down while Tang Jing brought Xiaomi down to thank him once more before they saw him off. Only then did the two of them get into the car and leave. After Su Yang reached his basement, a beep came into his mind. Bronze mission complete. Please check your reward. Su Yang was not in a hurry because he knew the abilities would be randomly provided once he tapped on it. He had not washed his hands or smashed his face with the brick, so he ought to take it slow. He tossed his bag to Gru and headed to the bathroom for a careful hand wash. Of course, he also used his lucky soap. After his hands smelled like flowers, Su Yang came out from the bathroom and wanted to take out the lucky disfiguring brick that he got yesterday. Before that, Gru held him up. Its two tiny sprouts extended forward with an envelope. It nudged Su Yang with its signature call, Gru, Gru. Surprised, Su Yang asked, "What is this?" Gru's sprout went into the envelope and took out a stack of red Grandpa Mao notes. Judging from the thickness, there were almost 10,000 yuan. He had a thought after he saw the money. "Did you got this from the bag?" Gru nodded its sprout. It was actually from Tang Jing, who must have snuck it in without his knowledge. Su Yang tried to recall what happened. If he remembered correctly, Tang Jing had not touched his bag at all. However, when Tang Xiaomi was sitting in the rear seat with him, the little girl might have had a chance, so she must have slipped it in without his notice. Tang Jing must have ordered Tang Xiaomi to slip it in. Su Yang's heart was filled with warmth at the token of gratitude. It seemed like there were still some good people in this world. It was rare for him to not take the reward from this incident, but he purely wanted to do something good. To his surprise, he was rewarded even better than other times. Su Yang smiled. Maybe this is what they call a good soul recompense. He took out his phone, tapped on WeChat and thanked Tang Jing. 2 minutes later, Tang Jing replied. "It is I who should be thanking you." Another voice message followed and it was Tang Xiaomi's cute voice chirping, "Thank you, big brother." Su Yang smiled. At the same time, in a high-class villa at the edge of the city, Tang Dafa was eating a bag of chips while scrolling through his friend circle in WeChat. Suddenly, he saw Tang Jing's status. "Thank the heavens and a friend, I got my daughter back. Thankfully it is just a false alarm." The picture that came with the status was Tang Jing and Tang Xiaomi's selfie. The two of them smiled brightly in the picture. Tang Dafa was shocked. The potato chip fell on his fat stomach and he did not even realize it. He found the kid. Chapter 20. Drawing the second ability. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Tang Dafa's first reaction was disbelief. As a part-time fortune teller, no one else but him knew that fortune-telling was nothing but fake, so Su Yang was destined to be a scapegoat. However, things seemed to prove that Su Yang had really foreseen the kid's location. It might be the biggest joke in the world. As his mind spun rapidly, Tang Dafa tossed his chips away and typed a message to Tang Jing with his fat fingers. "Ms. Tang, congratulations. Thank goodness it was a false alarm. Where did you find your daughter?" 2 minutes later, Tang Jing replied with a cold and brief message. "At home. When Tang Dafa saw the message, a sudden realization hit him and he laughed out loud. No wonder Su Yang could find the kid. The kid had already gone back home. It seemed like Su Yang's fortune-telling was just a fluke. Tang Dafa carefully analyzed the situation. If it were him, he would have started with Disneyland and the lady's house since these two places had the highest chances of locating the kid. What a lucky guy. After Tang Dafa filled the gaps with his imagination, he heaved a breath of relief. The world had not changed. It was still the one that he knew, and fortune-telling was still an art of deception. He did not ask any other questions. Instead, he started to ask Tang Jing for payment. Then, Ms. Tang, it's time to clear the fortune-telling fee for this round so that I can split the money with my friend. Right after she received the second message from Tang Dafa, Tang Jing frowned while she was pouring a glass of milk for her daughter. She might be weak, but she was not an idiot. That Tang Dafa had been shifting the responsibility for the past 2 days. He obviously wanted to cast away the problem, which was her in this case, yet he was shameless enough to ask her for payment. On second thought, since Tang Dafa did introduce Su Yang to her, even if he did not do anything, at least, he could get a little credit. Therefore, after a lot of thought, she still transferred 1,000 yuan over to him, which was the same price that she usually paid Tang Dafa for fortune-telling. To her surprise, in less than 2 seconds, Tang Dafa sent a third message. Ms. Tang, this is just the fee for me alone. I still have to pay my friend, so it will be double this time. Tang Jing got so angry that her face flushed. She had pleaded for Tang Dafa's help for many days and even almost got down to her knees, yet the fat man did not even help her. He had said that he would introduce her to a friend, but after spending a whole day with Su Yang, Tang Jing realized the two of them were not friends at all. They were not even familiar with each other. Su Yang was obviously a scapegoat that Tang Dafa got to shift the responsibility on. Even though Su Yang proved himself in the end, it had nothing to do with Tang Dafa. Yet, the man was shameless enough to ask for double the fee. How much more shameless he could be. Tang Jing got so angry that her chest started to heave strongly. However, at the very end, because she did not want to let that fat man know she gave Su Yang 10,000 yuan, her weak self compromised and transferred another 1,000 yuan over. Fine, I'll just pay double since it's for Su Yang anyway. After she transferred the money, Tang Jing blacklisted Tang Dafa without a second thought. The fat man was shameless. She really had no idea why she had fallen for his tricks so many times in the past. Tang Dafa's eyes curled up into 2 crescents after he got the money and his signature golden smile was on display. He happily replied with a thank you, but he realized that he had been blacklisted. Still, it was within his expectation. His performance in the past few days was nothing less than poor, so this woman would probably never look for him again. Since it was a one-time deal, of course, he would get as much as he could. As for Su Yang's share, after a second thought, he concluded that Su Yang was just a poor university student and had nothing to do with his friend, Jiang Yan. He planned to simply brush Su Yang off with 2,300 yuan. For little boss Tang, as someone who had been hustling in Shanghai for over 20 years, dealing with people using different approaches was part of the basics. Su Yang was counting the stack of red Grandpa Mao notes on his desk. He suppressed the joy in his heart and added the mountain to the 4,000 yuan that he carried. In the past few days, he had earned almost 30,000 yuan, which was more than 3 years of his family's income. He did not just earn enough for his rent for the rest of the year, but he even got enough for his daily expenses. On top of that, judging from the situation, he might be able to squeeze out his next semester's tuition fee. Su Yang did some calculations. After taking his rent, tuition fee, and daily expenses out of the equation, he still had a few thousand yuan left. He could send the money back and lighten the burden of his parents. While he studied in Shanghai, his parents had been living a bitter life. They did not even accept the money he earned during last semester. Su Yang knew his parents were trying to be considerate because they knew that his expenses in Shanghai were high and that he always consumed junk food. Being poor would also make him a joke among his friends and classmates, thus all the more his parents did not want his money. Thankfully, he got slightly richer, so his parents should live a better life. After all, he had the point system and his future would surely improve. After he finished counting the money, since the presence of fortune lingered in his hand, he decided to draw the rewards for the bronze mission. Before the draw, he still had one more thing to do. Bring out his godly item for drawing the abilities, the lucky disfiguring brick. When he got this brick, Su Yang had once hoped that he would never find a use for this brick. Who would have known that 2 days later, the brick would become useful? With a sour expression, Su Yang looked at the brick that did not change in terms of appearances after he added the point to it. He ought to cry but failed to shed a tear. He had always smashed people's faces with the brick, but who would have thought that he would be smashing his own today? Bring it on. The faster I get through it, the faster I will be reborn. For English, for the semester test, for the bronze mission. Su Yang endured the pain and smashed his face with the brick. Bang! A loud thud later, Su Yang's forehead and nose hurt badly. At that very moment, he felt something warm dripping out of his nose. His nose was bleeding. Su Yang looked at the brick and a countdown timer appeared on it. 29.51 and counting. It worked. He might not know how hard he smashed himself, but regardless, the effect of the brick was in play. Su Yang could not go back from this anymore. He withstood the pain and ignored the bleeding from his nose while he tapped on the button, check reward. Right away, the notification from the system popped. Completed bronze mission. Bronze points acquired. Able to add the bronze points to one of 3 random abilities provided. After the notification, an option window appeared before his eyes. There were 3 options for him to choose from. 1. Guitar.playing ability, 2. Guitar.playing ability, 3. Guitar.playing ability, what? What the F***ck? What the F***ck? Su Yang wanted to curse the system's mother so badly. What kinds of random abilities were these? Why was it the guitar.playing ability? And why the hell were all 3 of them the same? The system had not informed him about all 3 abilities being the same. It was at that moment when a new window popped up. Acquired 3 similar abilities. Reward abilities are related to elementary talent. Voice specialty, 1 more window popped up. Elementary talent. Voice specialty, remark. When you sing, your voice is extra charming, and if your emotions resonate, your singing and guitar.playing abilities will increase to the next level. Su Yang lost his mind. What the F***ck am I going to do with this? I'm not going into showbiz. Why the hell are you giving me a charming voice? And it only works when I sing. Can't I speak charmingly during normal times? At least, give me a guitar. Su Yang wiped the blood off his face. He felt like he lost a great deal in this ability drawing process. Besides breaking his nose, he had even drawn a losing ability. If he got the guitar.playing ability, why did the system not give him a guitar? Could he get a guitar with his charming voice? No, he had to spend money on it. He drew his reward but potentially lost a few hundred yuan. No matter how he looked at it, he had lost terribly this time.